Welcome to the OMG I'm Launching Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Westcar, and today I have Shanice with me. Welcome, Shanice.
Thank you, Ken. I'm so excited to chat with you today. I really got to peek inside your launch game plan, and it's just such an awesome resource to really clarify and map out a launch on a high level, especially coming from my background in project management with launches. It feeds my soul. So I really wish some of my launch clients started out with your launch game plan so that when they went to their launches, they had a plan instead of just winging it and knew exactly how their launch was performing afterwards, because that's really what's important.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I thrive on keeping things super simple. And with that game plan, it's about just keeping it as simple as it possibly can, because we tend to think that when you have a plan, it needs to be this big elaborate thing, but in reality, that could just keep you from actually getting anything done. So it's better just let's keep it simple and get you going, and then we can build on that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Before we get into what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to talk a little bit about how having or acting like we have a multi-million-dollar company can help us and serve us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you help, how you help people?
Okay, so I want to say hi to all the launchers and listeners. I'm Shanice Miller, the owner of Tassa Group, and I help service-based providers, course creators, creatives, people just like you to scale their launches without stress by using automations and systems.
Awesome. I'll be interested to just hear a little bit about your journey, because it sounded to me like it wasn't just this regular thing that happened. So mind telling us a little bit about that?
Of course. So I actually started off as an educational consultant, and I was featured in Forbes for that. And it was just me, and I did not realize how messy and unorganized my business was until I was right about to hit that six-figure mark. And I had just had my best month in business, but I really felt so drained, so exhausted. And with that educational consultant business, it had a course, it had a group program, coaching program that I was doing as well. But I was still feeling really drained, really exhausted after scaling to that. So it really made me start to question and wonder, how am I going to do this again next month? How can I maintain the same success or higher success if I already feel so tired? And I decided to just sell the business. And when I listed my business on the online marketplace, I got some offers and interest for it immediately, but they weren't anywhere near where I thought my business was worth. And it really just bugged me that I got such lowball offers on my business. So when I looked and tried to see what other businesses were doing, how much they were being listed for, how much they were making, and I really started to see this pattern that the owners that were getting the most money for the businesses had systems in place. It allowed them to only work 10 hours per week, where I was working, full time in the business plus.
And plus, yeah.
Yeah. And after discovering that the systems were really the key that I was missing to having a successful and sustainable business, I started working with other business owners to put their systems in place so they could have that freedom, they could have less stress, and they could really scale their businesses simply.
Yeah, I mean, systems, it's almost like it can make or break your business.
It really can.
Because you were working like so many hours, and without those systems, that would just continue to be like that. But once you kind of put everything in place and you have a system, you have a process, you have things to go by, makes things a lot easier.
Definitely.
And how would you say that, if we're going to talk about, maintaining a multi-million-dollar company and thinking about it like that, I think a lot of small business owners don't really see their business as a multi-million-dollar company, obviously, because they're probably not making multi-million-dollar. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't treat it like that. And I would love to hear your perspective on this.
So I completely agree. I think that we have to start out with the end in mind always, with a goal in mind. Where do we see our business? And of course, systems can change over the times, but at least we have something in mind where we're saying, okay, I'm not looking at, and maybe your first step is going to be, I'm not looking at something where it's just going to be me running the whole show, but I'm thinking about a small team running the show. So we put in systems in place for the small team to really just document and say, okay, this is what I need to do, document my process, really mapping out what do you do on a day-to-day basis. And setting up these systems are something that we cover more in depth in my 3 steps to automate and scale your launch mini training. And I'll tell your listeners how they can get all of that for free later on.
Awesome. Yeah. It's- having those processes in place, it's one thing, but it's one thing to just create them, and a lot of people don't even do that, and they not even, I don't know, they probably don't even really realize that they have a process. Uh, so you talked a little bit about just mapping it out and all that stuff, but how do you kind of get started with that? Is it just to get started, or do you map out everything before you kind of start planning out, or how do you see that?
Yeah, so I kind of do a high level overview with my clients, and we'll start breaking everything into their whole business into different departments. So usually there's like a marketing department, and there is a sales department, and then there's like the client work department. For your launches, it'll be a little bit different. So we would have it like the marketing department because we are generating and moving leads towards a certain area. And then we have the launch funnel area where you're putting all your clients in. And then, of course, we do have to deliver the product to the client, so your service, your launch, or your program, and deal with those customer service emails and make sure that we have the processes in place to really map out those tasks that we do with each of those departments. So those are really the 3 main departments that I have.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had a client that was a course creator, and she had very successful launches selling this total of $12 million in online courses, but her systems and email list was just so messy. And it
Mm-hmm.
was because her launches scaled quickly and she didn't have the time, the know how to put the systems in place. The
Right.
course that she actually took to teach her how to launch and how to do the online course didn't teach systems, and that's the gap that I see in many programs. So it, even though she had scaled so quickly, and that's what I see happens a lot, people will scale quickly in the matter of a year or 2 years, and it made it difficult to hire someone to help this particular client since all the tasks she needed someone to do and how to do those tasks were just all in her head. So I helped her clean it up. I helped her put those processes onto pen and paper and really make it in a way to show someone else how exactly to do that, to pick those same processes up and to do them the same way that she would do them without missing any beats.
Mm, that's awesome. And about this process is not just about you having those processes for yourself, but it makes it a lot easier if you have that ready. And when you do decide to hire someone or get a VA or just someone part time, then you have something to hand off and just like say, okay, this is what you need to do, and here's the process. Go
Yeah.
ahead and do it.
And that's what I see so much when people are trying to hire someone to help them out, like the VA or even a marketing team, because that's what I see often in the launch. And
Hmm.
the person's telling me, like, oh, the VA's not doing anything. But I'm always asking the person, did you set that VA up for success? Did you tell them exactly what do you expect from them and how to do the tasks that you want them to do? Or are you just telling them a blanket statement of, you know, check out my launch, and they don't have that checklist, they don't have those procedures in place to say exactly what they're checking out. What I have in my mind might be something completely different from what you have in your mind when you talk about, review my launch.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I see that as well with having a launch plan is, keeping things really simple is really key because like we talked about, it's if it gets a lot, it gets overwhelming, and then they might not actually do the stuff that they're supposed to do. But at the same time, having a plan is better than winging it as well.
Definitely. So I did have a client, a launch client, who actually kind of was winging it,
Hmm.
and they forgot to connect the payment provider, their payment processor, to the correct page. So
Oh.
that person missed out on so many sales, and that's where
Hmm.
having those systems comes into place. And with a good system, you're going to remember to check those things before sending traffic to those pages, and you're going to make sure that everything is working smoothly. So that's one of the big benefits that I really see in launches, is setting up those systems to review all of the pages and the links in your launch funnel before sending people there.
Hmm. Yeah, testing out things, make sure that the softwares are talking together and all that stuff. 100%, because yeah, like I said, you can miss out a lot of sales, and people tend to not let you know that
Yeah.
things are not working. Unfortunately, that would be great if everybody did that, but yeah. That's a big gap in the system for sure. Um, so if we go a little bit back to thinking and being and acting like this, you have like this multi-million-dollar company.
Mhm.
What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people do in terms of not viewing their business as a multi-million-dollar company?
I see them as just once again keeping everything in their minds. When you are not really seeing yourself as a multi-million-dollar business, you're not documenting the processes, you're not setting up systems in place for someone else to take over or to hand off. So you're not thinking of what's going to happen when I get employees. We're just thinking about for the right now, we need to make some money, we need to do this launch successfully. And so you are the one doing everything. And we do tend to, and some of my clients tend to forget things. So you'll do one launch and then you'll say, okay, I know what to do because that launch was semi-successful, but you forget things like, okay, well, what made this launch a little bit unsuccessful? What could you do better? What were some of the small details? So instead of really reinventing the wheel for each launch, we're making and setting up the systems to make your launches repeatable. And so when you have a
Mm.
process in place, you don't forget those key things like turning on ads or retargeting or checking the funnel or making sure customers get sent to the correct pages after purchasing. And it's just so many moving parts in a funnel that you really do need those systems. And that's what sets you up to become that multi-million-dollar company in a stress-free way.
Mm. Have you seen people like people are different? So obviously people do things differently. They respond to stress differently and stuff like that. Have you seen people or where you had to maybe adapt to that person and how they respond to like stress or because a lot of people might not actually do anything until last minute. Have you noticed anything like that?
Of course. Is that even a question? So I've had a gamut of all sorts of people. I had one person who was, in the process of doing a launch, and she's like so high strung. And she goes,
Hmm.
how are you sitting there so calmly? But for some people, you do have to kind of take on the energy of that person. If they're stressed out, they need someone to bounce them out and say, this is going to be okay. We're going to
Hmm.
get through this together and we can all calm down and follow the steps.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I've seen that as well. That people tend to push things out instead of even if you have like this long runway, you have 60 days until you launch and you have plenty of time, but for
Hmm.
some reason we kind of keep on pushing it and we get distracted or something happens and still it happens like in the last couple of weeks, obviously.
And the systems help prevent you from getting so distracted because you need to do step one, step two, step three, step four, step five.
Hmm.
And when you have those distractions and you go back to that system, you're like, oh, okay, maybe I will update my system to include this distraction, or I'll see that it's no point for me to have that in there.
Hmm. And that's probably like a big mistake that people don't do as well. They don't update that process or update that system to make sure that they do address the thing that happened or didn't happen.
And that's what I help people with, a lot of my clients with as well, with helping them to update those systems and reminding them, actually giving them that nudge that systems do need to be upgraded and updated as the more that we scale, the more that our business changes, the more that we evolve.
100%. And I think just, one thing is having a plan, but being able to schedule things out, like emails, obviously you can schedule that. A lot of times you can schedule social media posts and all that as well. Because once you actually do get to the open cart and you have that launch week, that's where you kind of want to make sure that everything is taken care of and you
Hmm.
can just show up and go live or whatever, just be present and in that moment.
Yes. And I mean, with going live, sometimes there's still hiccups. I've had clients who's had like
100%.
an emergency school call and when they're going live, so they had to, like, oh, sorry, let me hold on. And it's, perfectly okay. But as long as we have the main things like those links, like making sure the checkout's linked, like making sure the customers go through their funnel so that you're not getting a whole bunch of customer service emails after you launch saying, I can't access my account.
Hmm. Yeah, I had once. I did a webinar, and everything was going perfectly fine. Everything was working, no problems. And then suddenly, all the power shuts out in the entire block
Oh
that
my
I'm living
gosh.
in. And I'm sitting in pitch black. It's dark outside, and I can't see anything. And I don't know. I don't have internet. I don't know how to reach out to people and tell them that I lost the power. It's like, what do I do? What do I do? But fortunately, I was calm, collected, and I decided, I can use the internet on my phone, or the 4G or whatever it was at that time.
Hmm.
And I just hooked it up to the computer, managed to get online again. Obviously, it was pitch black, so I didn't have any other light than from my computer, but managed to get back online and get people that were still hanging out there, and make sure that the webinar went as planned. But yeah, that was crazy, and those things do happen, and we don't have to plan for them, but we should be able to have the headspace to deal with it.
Yes. And that's what helps with being organized, with, making sure that you can calmly have like a game plan for if that does happen. And maybe you would, if
Hmm.
that's something that's a recurring thing where you are, you'll add that to your, frequently asked questions area in your processes. Like, oh, okay, if this happens, this is what we need to do. We need to remain calm first, and then we need to get on our phones or, do something else.
Yeah, exactly. um, how do you have, like, is there a process that you prefer, or that you've seen that you use a lot over and over again, or is it really different between every client that you work with?
So I am a big believer in standardizing systems to a certain extent. So I do
Hmm.
have like a framework, kind of like a rough outline of what I would use for each of my clients. So if we are documenting processes, there is a rough outline which is going to outline like, okay, what is the purpose of this process? What's our goal for doing this? And how are we going to input the steps? And what kind of project management tool are we going to have? But when we're actually going in, because different people like to work with different tools. So I'm not like a whole stickler. I do have a favorite, but if someone's already working with a certain tool, then we make sure that we incorporate the tools that they they're already comfortable with into
Hmm.
their processes and making sure that we're just documenting everything.
Yeah. So on that note, what is your favorite?
So my favorite tool is actually ClickUp just because it's more of an all-in-one. I've tried Trello, I've tried Asana, and those things definitely will work for some businesses. And a lot of businesses just start off with having a Google Doc, and that's perfectly fine as well. So we
Mm,
really work with clients where they are and where they are in the process. Some people need more work than others. Sometimes a simple Google Doc will do.
yeah, and I think that's an important note to make as well, that you don't have to have this big fancy
No,
project management tool that costs you several dollars a month. You can actually
and a
get
long
by
time to
with
learn.
Google. Yeah, not to say, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I use something called Infinity, which is kind of similar to ClickUp,
Okay.
but yeah, I mean, you got to find what works for you, obviously.
Yes, definitely.
Hmm. All right. So let's see. You use ClickUp. Um, how do you use ClickUp? What is your purpose for ClickUp?
So my purpose for ClickUp is more so on the client management, client projects arena. And then I do have different, what they call it, spaces for like the marketing, the sales department. So I do kind of break it up a little bit based on what is my goal and also which type of department that I have. And it's really so that I use ClickUp kind of as my checklist. So I
Hmm.
have it detailed and I have it updated so that I can automate certain things. So with ClickUp, I'll start the day off. I'll look at my dashboard. My dashboard's going to tell me what kind of tasks do I have for the day? What's due tomorrow? What's due today? What's coming up in the future? You can customize these dashboards to put whatever it is you want to see. If I have my employees working on something and I don't want to ping them to ask them, hey, what's the status on this? Then I can just look at that dashboard, see what my employees are working on without having to ping them or micromanage. And I can see like, okay, where did they move this across the line? Are they stuck on anything? Because we do have an area that we put for where we're stuck. Or if someone's
Hmm.
stuck and they need additional assistance, or has this been complete? Is it in progress? Is it reviewed? So that's a nice high level thing I use to start off my day. And then we do go into the individual tasks. So my task, everything, like I said, is one big main space in ClickUp. where I'm doing that to say, okay, with each client, we are doing all these steps, to go from the time a client signs on to us, or maybe the client signs up for the online course that we just launched, all the way through to the end. And yes, the courses, a lot of the course platforms, they'll have like the email drip type of thing where they'll send out the new course every week if you want to, or they'll update it. But I find there's certain touch points along that line, the customer journey, when they're going through your projects, that we need to talk to them about, so that we can get that free feedback from them. So maybe right after, you might want to get some market research. So you would ask a question and have an automatic email sent out saying, what made you decide to purchase this course? What are you looking for to get out of it? And certain questions like that, so that you know what to put in your course to make your launches more successful and more profitable for the next time around. And then maybe midway through the course, we have another one that's automatically sent, or you can assign certain tasks to different people so that they can send off an email or so, and have that same, have another checkpoint, how are things going so far? What can we improve on? So that your customers really feel cared for, and we just don't skip anything. So yeah, even though if you are a course launcher, this can still work for you if you are looking for something to kind of give you a little bit more of a customized approach, and so the customers can feel more welcome. And you know that when customers feel more welcome, they are going to be more raving fans. They're going to promote your course to other people, and they're also going to, give you really good feedback that you can use to make your course even better and to help more people, so you can make that bigger impact.
Yeah, I think that's really super important to just, it's one thing to just, you open up the course to sell it and people join, and then a lot of people just, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
My job here is done, But like you said, follow up, ask how things are going, if there's anything, if there's any issues, questions, whatever. And I mean, you can do that with email, or you can have, if you have a Facebook group, that's a perfect way to do it as well. Just keeping people engaged and make sure they respond or whatever to whatever you're wondering. But
I completely agree. I've seen so many clients and course launchers, and it's just like, okay, I set it up and it's set and forget. And it's like, no, it's not set and forget, because you still have to nurture those relationships.
100%. Absolutely. And I think also, just regardless of whether people buy or not, there's a good chance to get some feedback from the people who didn't buy as well.
Yeah.
Just sending out an exit survey, like, why didn't you buy? A simple question like that could give you some great answers of how you can improve on your next launch.
Yes.
And also debrief. You mentioned that a little quickly before as well. Just, when you go through a launch and you have, I like to go and put in some comments during my launch, and just, things that I see happening or pop up, and just briefly note those things down, so that I can, when I look back at a debrief, I can just have a look at, okay, these things didn't work, these things worked. I don't know, how do you do a debrief when you do a launch or something like that?
So it really depends on the person, how they have certain things set up. And so I usually ask the person, like, do you have things that come up randomly? Because if it comes up randomly, then we will put that particular project or task to reoccur each day at the end of the day, or, somewhere in the middle of the day, or right after you just launched, to say, what did you learn from this launch? What can we improve on, so that you don't forget those things? But if you're, if I talk to a client and the client's more like, maybe wait until at the end of the launch, I don't want to have to do something daily, then we will do a recurring event for at the end of each launch, to say, we are, what were the outcomes? And sometimes you even have, like, in your plan, your marketing plan that you had, really great, once again, really, really great to say, like, okay, what are the statistics? What are the stats from our launch? Were we profitable? How much was the revenue? What was the percent of conversion? So I really love that you did that. And that's what everybody needs to do, so they can really look at the numbers to truly see what they are, how many people are converting, how can we increase those numbers.
And I think you touched on a really important thing here, is that you look at the numbers, not just, I just made, X amount of dollars, and, it wasn't that great, I think my launch failed. But if you start looking at the numbers, what was the conversion rates, that will tell you a whole different story, whether that was a good launch or not, because that means if they were good, you can scale.
Yes.
It's really that simple.
Or
So
even
you
if you
shouldn't,
flopped, you can also,
yeah.
revamp it and know for the next time, like, okay, this is what I need to do.
hmm Absolutely. And also, you mentioned, learn the lessons that you learn from the launch. I think that's an important aspect as well, because a lot of people will look at the launch and say, oh, okay, I didn't meet my goal, so it's a failed launch. But like you said, what was the lessons that you learned during this launch? I mean, that could be just as valuable as the outcome of the launch that you were actually looking for.
It is, and that's what helps you to, whenever I see people launching and when I had some of my clients launching, they're doing multiple launches, and after each launch they are going back to see how can I make this better. And that's really the biggest thing, because with each launch you are going to be tweaking a certain area or a certain aspect. Maybe you're tweaking the copy one time, and then maybe the next section or the next launch that you do, you might be tweaking who you're targeting. So then that's the marketing category that we have in your business. And then maybe the next section that we do, we're saying, okay, our messaging's working well, our targeting audience working well. What's up with the conversions? How can we, change that? Maybe we need to change the button color or certain things. So we are adding more so checklist tasks, duties into these systems, so that we are checking that each time in case something happens. In case, God forbid, I did know someone who knew everything, had everything in their mind. They were doing a chain of stores, and something happened. They lost their memory. The worst. Medical issue, lost your memory. So it's like,
Oh,
well,
wow,
what do I do if
really?
I lost my memory? How could somebody take over my business to keep it still running if I wasn't there?
Huh. Well, that's actually a great way to think about it. What if that would happen? God forbid, obviously, but
Yeah.
yeah, what would happen if something did happen to you where you actually weren't able to get back to work and, run the business? How would that, yeah, how could somebody just step in, take things over?
And that's what systems do. And that's how I set it up, so that when you're assigning it to someone, you're not necessarily assigning it to a person, but you can assign it to a job title. You can assign
Mm,
and make a due date to, whoever else can fill in that. And no one will have to necessarily train them, since they are going through the training that we provide in the systems.
yeah, that's, I never heard anybody mention it like that, but I love it. I like that. It really puts things on the spot there, for
Yes,
sure.
we get
Um,
detailed.
I'm sorry, what?
I said we get detailed.
Yeah, we get detailed for sure. It's just something that you feel like we've left out that we should have mentioned by now that yeah.
Yeah, I just think that with each launch, your listeners should definitely be looking at the launch beforehand and really making sure they're setting up those perfect systems. They are revamping and updating and evaluating their systems to see what needs to be done. And just start off by having that Google Doc and mapping out, writing down, okay, what are all the different things you have to do? And then making subtasks to say, what are the steps involved in each of these tasks?
hmm Yeah. Keep things simple. It really is all about that.
Yes.
Awesome. I really appreciate you coming on podcast and sharing your expertise. And how can people reach out to you, get in touch with you, or work with you?
Yeah, so I have created a special page just for your listeners. They can go to tasklegroup.com/OMG, where they can
Cool.
get my 3 steps to automate and scale your launch. It's a mini training. And if your listeners are tired of DIYing, they want the help in organizing their business, setting up their systems, and they want a personal one-to-one help, then they can book a call with me through that same page, or your listeners can connect with me on LinkedIn through that same page as well, tasklegroup.com/OMG.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, like I said, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I loved it. Had a great time.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody who's been listening in this week, and we'll catch up again real soon.